Okay, picture this. You start a new year, or maybe just a regular old Monday, and you are absolutely determined to build a new habit. You set your alarms, you buy all the right gear, you map out the perfect plan, but then, a few weeks later, you abandon it entirely. And almost immediately, that harsh inner critic chimes in, right? Calling you unmotivated, undisciplined, or just plain lazy. Well, if you have ever harshly judged yourself for failing to meet your own expectations, you are absolutely in the right place. Let's dive into this explainer.
So, this brings us to the fundamental question we're answering today. We so often label our inability to get things done as this massive character flaw. We tell ourselves, if I just tried harder, I could do this. But what if that heavy feeling of laziness doesn't have anything to do with a lack of willpower at all? What if what you're actually experiencing is an exhausting, completely invisible burden created by your own nervous system, just trying to protect you? Section 1. The myth of laziness, trauma versus discipline. We're so conditioned to focus on surface-level judgments, things like procrastination, avoidance, a total lack of discipline. Society essentially teaches us that a lack of productivity means we're worthless, that we have to be human doings rather than human beings. But the reality going on inside your body is so much deeper. When you grow up in environments where your needs are neglected, or you experience chronic, ongoing stress, your brain actually learns to equate rest with rejection. So when those overwhelming expectations hit, your brain literally shuts down to conserve energy. It is not laziness. It's emotional exhaustion. It's your biology prioritizing basic survival over those heavy external expectations.
Section 2. Stuck in survival mode, the brain's safe mode. When you go through trauma, prolonged grief, or severe burnout, your brain essentially boots up in safe mode, restricting resources to essential functions only. This typically manifests as the 4 Fs. We have fight, which is facing a threat head-on, flight, which is running away, freeze, where you shut down because you can't escape, and fawn, which is people-pleasing to soothe a potential threat. So if you've been procrastinating, struggling to focus, or operating on a super short fuse, please hear this. Your body is actually brilliant. These responses are evolutionary mechanisms explicitly designed to protect you from perceived threats. It's literally just your biology trying to keep you alive. Section 3. Cortisol and your brain, the broken thermostat. To really understand survival mode, we have to talk about cortisol. Now, in short bursts, cortisol is amazing. It sharpens your senses and can literally save your life. It's controlled by your HPA axis. That's the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal glands. Think of this entire system like a thermostat in your house. When the room gets too hot, the thermostat is supposed to kick in and turn off the heat. But chronic exposure to stress absolutely breaks this feedback loop. The receptors become less sensitive, the alarm just keeps on ringing, and that cortisol, which should be helpful, turns into a slow-acting toxin that floods your brain for weeks, months, or even years. What's genuinely fascinating about this chemical cascade is how cortisol targets specific regions of your brain based on their receptor density. Think about the hippocampus, which is your memory center. Under chronic stress, it literally shrinks. The neurons retract, and you actually lose the ability to form new memories. But then consider the amygdala, your fear center. While your memory center is shrinking, chronic cortisol actually causes the fear center to grow new connections. It hypertrophies. Your brain is physically being remodeled to become worse at thinking and remembering, and significantly better at panicking.
Section 4. The allostatic load, the cost of stress.
The clinical term for all of this compounding damage is the allostatic load. It's basically the physiological wear and tear on your body from a stress response that simply refuses to shut off. Because our brains are constantly trying to predict and reduce uncertainty, carrying a high allostatic load severely minimizes your ability to cope with future challenges. It fundamentally alters your decision-making algorithms, which leaves you feeling completely depleted and exhausted before you even get out of bed in the morning.
Section 5. Executive dysfunction explained. Your inner CEO offline.
Chronic stress causes severe structural changes and even neurodegeneration in your prefrontal cortex. And why does this matter so much? Well, because your prefrontal cortex is the CEO of your brain. It handles the heavy lifting, planning, organizing, and initiating tasks. When trauma floods this area with cortisol, your inner CEO is essentially taken completely offline. This is exactly why just starting a super simple task like cleaning your room or replying to a single email can suddenly feel like you're trying to climb Mount Everest.
Behaviorally speaking, this means your working memory becomes severely impaired. You lose your cognitive flexibility. And instead of making deliberative, thoughtful choices, your brain completely shifts to habitual, default responses just to survive the current moment. When people call themselves lazy because they can't focus or get organized, they are completely missing the scientific fact that their brain's capacity to manage tasks has been chemically and structurally hijacked.
Section 6. Reversing the damage. Neuroplasticity at work.
Okay, time for some good news. We can absolutely repair this neurological architecture. The scientifically proven methods to respond to and manage your survival mode break down into 3 actionable steps: self-compassion, self-regulation, and self-care. Let's explore how these practices directly heal your brain.
The very first step is replacing those unrealistic expectations with true self-compassion. When you punish yourself with negative self-talk for not meeting a goal, you're literally just spiking your cortisol again. Instead, we need to use what psychologists call releasing statements. For example, catching a negative thought and actively saying, "Hey, it's okay that I felt upset today. Reacting is just my body's instinct trying to help me survive." By tapping into this internal caregiving system, your brain actually releases oxytocin, which acts as a direct counterattack to anxiety and prolonged stress. To put the importance of this into perspective, we need to talk about a specific number: 20%. In animal models, just 3 weeks of chronic stress can cause the prefrontal cortex to lose up to 20% of its dendritic spine density. That is massive, physical, structural damage. But interventions like aerobic exercise are actually powerful enough to trigger the production of BDNF proteins. Think of these proteins as a biological growth serum. They literally signal your brain to grow new connections, increasing your hippocampal volume and quite literally reversing the damage.
Building on that, let's talk about specific, daily actions you can take to actively rebuild your brain and lower your allostatic load. Try practicing I am here statements, simply naming 3 things around you to regulate your nervous system and pull yourself right back into the present moment. Make sure to prioritize both passive rest, like taking a nap, and active rest, like doing some light stretching. Engage in mindfulness meditation, which has actually been proven to increase gray matter density in just 8 weeks. And critically, you have to manage your capacity by learning to say no. Finding your own unique version of self-care is exactly how you recalibrate that broken stress thermostat we talked about earlier. I really want to let this truth sink in. When you start meeting your struggles with kindness instead of shame, you free yourself from those trauma-driven chains. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are a survivor. Your struggles to initiate tasks or stay focused are a profound biological response to trauma and stress. They are not a lack of willpower, and they are certainly not a character flaw.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. We've uncovered how the invisible burden of a dysregulated nervous system alters the very structure of your brain, but we've also seen the undeniable proof that neuroplasticity allows you to rebuild it. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Now that you know for a fact your brain can heal, how will you treat yourself tomorrow? Are you going to continue the exhausting cycle of shame? Or will you choose compassionate curiosity? Thank you so much for watching, and please remember to give yourself some grace as you move forward.